kids, how's it going? So I'm just headed down to the barn to milk this morning, and I thought I'd take you guys along with me and show you a little bit of safe milk handling practices and what I do in the morning to kind of make sure that my milk is safe and that I'm bringing the best possible, healthiest milk into the house and using for cheese making. So to me, safe raw milk handling is important for a couple things. It's going to be so bumpy, you're going to see me jostling up and down here. Our driveway is like so bumpy. And I'm just on the driveway here, so don't feel like there's nothing I can hit except for a fence and some trees. Anyways, going through this nice puddle. To me, as a cheesemaker, safe raw milk handling is important for a couple reasons. For one, it's important because I'm bringing milk into the house that I'm going to feed my children, I'm going to feed my family. When I was pregnant, it's milk that I'm going to drink. So, you know, it's really, like I always tell people, be informed. Make sure you're informed about your raw milk sources and what the problems can be, and yeah, it's really important to be informed. So that's the first reason that it's really important to me. The second reason it's really important to me as a cheesemaker is that I don't want any competing bacteria in my milk. When I put my chosen culture into my milk, I don't want it to have to work too hard. I want it to have to just kind of be able to feed on the lactose and do whatever it wants. And sure, there's some other bacteria in there because it's raw milk, and that's going to be kind of beneficial to it, but I don't want it to have competing bacteria. So that's the second reason why it's really important to me. You can hear my milk buckets sloshing around back there, or bouncing around back there. So we're down at the barn now. Suki's waiting. Suki's waiting for me. So I'm gonna take you in. She hates it when I film while I milk. She absolutely hates it. So I'm just gonna do the best I can. She might be misbehaved, but she hates it when, like, she doesn't care that I film, but she hates it that I'm like talking and stuff. She's like, why? This is our silent time. I'm not sure what's going on here. So yeah, let's head on in. What's going on with your hair? You're having a hair day. Go shed some light on the situation here. Hi, Orange Susan. Hi. Alright, what do we got to deal with? Not too bad. When I told Zach I was going to make a video about safe raw milk handling, he's like, watch Suki be like the grossest today. I was like, yeah, she probably will be. No, she's not too bad at all. Alright, here we go. Okay, so first things first, in the morning when I come in, I get Suki all set up. I've already got my all my clean buckets here, so I grab a lidded bucket to transfer up nice and clean. You always want to watch your seals. I'll talk a little bit more about that later, that your seals are nice and clean. And then I've got this Kraft peanut butter jar that I keep my nice clean rags in. So I've got some warm soapy water in here, and I've got my milk cow rags here. So I'm gonna get those clean. Ooh, that nice steam. It's pretty cold out here this morning. It's not that bad, but it's pretty cold. So it's like, I think it's like -4 this morning. The other day it was -9. It was so cold. So that this nice warm water feels nice. All right, so let's get going. When I come on over, first things first, if she was like super dirty or if she was shedding or something, I would give her a good brush down. She's not too bad. She's a little bit dirty, but not too bad. Sometimes it's like opening a can of worms though. When you start brushing, if they're like quite bad, sometimes it's best to just leave it until after, because it can just be like once you loosen the hair, then it can just be all falling down. So the reason that you want to do that is that you want to kind of limit the amount of stuff that's going to fall into your bucket. So like if her tail was really dirty or something, I would give it a wash. But basically I'm just kind of getting the dirt off, anything that would fall into the bucket. I want to eliminate that as much as possible. But like I said, sometimes it's like opening a can of worms because you loosen the hair and then all of it starts falling in. So now I'm going to go around and I'm going to wash all the teats. See, she hates it when I talk while I film. Sorry, Suki. So I go around to all the teats and give them like a preliminary clean. This one, front one's actually pretty dirty. So I always take probably 6 rags in my clean bucket because you just never know how dirty she's going to be. And then I keep extra rags down here too if I need to, because there's sometimes when you would just be coated. And a lot of those times, you'll get it pretty clean, the udder pretty clean, but then you'll just throw the milk because it's just too, you'll give it, I'll give it to the bigger calves or something. Because you'll know when you milk and you look at your bucket and there's so many specks of dirt and poop and stuff, you're like, no, don't want to keep that. So you want to just basically, the biggest thing is keeping it as clean as you can. So if something falls in your bucket, you want to pull it out right away. You just want to limit the things that can fall in your bucket. And then we're going to go around and dry them all. So this is really important because if you're hand milking, it's so hard to hand milk with wet teats. Your hands just start sticking. So making sure you dry really good. If you had a contaminated teat or something, if your cow had mastitis in one quarter or something that you're trying to treat, I would always make sure I use separate cloths for that teat so that you're not cross-contaminating into other teats. So now I'm going to come over here, and the first thing I do, because the highest somatic cell count is in the first couple squirts of milk, so your first thing you want to do, go around, give a couple squirts out on each quarter. She's like, stop talking. I do 2 or 3, something like that. All right. Alright guys, so I got my nice clean milk here, half of it anyways, there's still more to come, but you can see it's nice and clean. So I'm gonna put it in my bucket. If there was I'm just gonna straighten you guys up. I'm going to transfer it to my nice lidded bucket while I finish off milking. If there was dirt or flecks of poop that I could visibly see, I would pluck them out. But I usually, if anything like that falls in the bucket while I'm milking, I pluck it out right then and there. Always important when you dump from, I call this your mother bucket. So when you dump into your mother bucket, make sure that you check what side you're dumping from, because if she kicked the bucket or something like that, you don't want that milk, that nice clean milk, to run over any poopy areas. So that's one thing I always say. Back for a little bit more. I'm gonna put that lid on so that it's gonna stay nice and clean as possible while I finish off milking. So I'm gonna go finish off milking and then I'm gonna talk to you guys a little bit more. Alright, so I finished up now. I'm gonna add the last of my milk into my mother bucket here. Again, nice clean milk, checking the side that I'm dumping from, and adding in. All right, so remember how I said that it's like -4 here, that's Celsius, but it's about -4. So that is an important piece to this puzzle. If it was like 30 degrees in the summer, like 30 above, it was hot, I wouldn't be dawdling at all. I would be getting this milk up to the house as quickly as I could so I could clean it and get it into the refrigerator or get it into the cheese pot. Because it's a little bit colder, sorry Suki, I'm coming. Because it's a little bit colder, I'm okay to kind of talk to you guys, show you a little bit around, finish my other chores down in the barn. I don't want to make it any more than half an hour though, that this milk is sitting uncleaned. So that's definitely my practice. Your practice might be different. Whatever temperature you're living at might be different. But today, because this milk is fairly clean, it's like clean to the eyeball, I'm okay to leave it for half an hour. Maybe it won't even be that much, and finish my other chores in the barn. So as I said before, sometimes it's like opening a can of worms when you brush your cow before milking. So if Suki's quite dirty and I don't think that anything's at risk of falling into the bucket, I'll brush her after milking. So I'm gonna go ahead and give her a little brush down. She's all done her grain. Oops. And this is just gonna kind of loosen everything up. She's gonna go out on pasture. So during the day when she lays in the grass and stuff, all these loose hairs, they will fall off. And Zach does the night milking, so she will be all nice and clean, hopefully, for Zach tonight, and not have any loose hairs. Hey, Sue. And she is shedding a little bit because we're coming out of winter here. I was laughing at her hairdo when we walked in because usually she has like the curliest hairdo, but today it's straight. And so that is interesting. There's an interesting fact there. This has nothing to do with this. It's not a fact. It's an interesting old wives' tale that now I'm gonna get it wrong. I'll look at it after and make sure I got it right, and then post if I got it right on the video. So if their hair is curly, I'm pretty sure this is right. If their hair is curly when they're pregnant, that means they're pregnant with a heifer. And if it's straight when they're pregnant, it means they're pregnant with a steer. That's an old wives' tale. But it's pretty accurate, and it was accurate in Newt's case. Now that's why I think it's straight. So it was accurate when she had her last calf. So, yeah, kind of interesting. But I'll look it up and make sure that I'm not leading you astray. Alright. Hey, Suki. You can see how the hair is just like flying everywhere. Yeah, you don't want to have that all just flying everywhere. Alright, Suki, I'll let you know. So we had to get ahead of ourselves because I needed to milk Suki and she doesn't like to wait, and it's like all with my cow training and maybe I need to be better, but we got a system and it works. Anyways, but now I'm going to talk to you guys about making sure that your milk is healthy even before you go to milk it, because that's really important. You want to make sure that you're getting milk, good, healthy raw milk from a healthy cow. And to start with that, it depends where your cow is living. So if you're sourcing milk from somebody else and not your farm, it's a great idea to go and have a site visit and just check out what are their milk handling practices, how healthy are their cows. You might want to think about things like I don't test my cows for things like BVL or tuberculosis, but you might want to think, is that something that's important to you? Is that something that you want to source milk from farms that test for that? And also, when I do this video, I'm not condoning doing anything illegal, so look at your jurisdictions. you know, the stuff. It's also and on that kind of just side note, it's really important to understand what the the legal stuff is in your state or in your province, or well, if you're in Canada, it's just always blanketedly illegal. But if you're in the States, there's lots of states that allow the sale of raw milk. So making sure that you're kind of aware of what your responsibilities are and what the farmer's responsibilities are and what you're asking them, because there's a lot at stake for a farmer to be providing raw milk. So it's a good idea just to kind of have an understanding of what's going on there. So back to healthy cow. So for me, having healthy milk starts with Suki being healthy and Suki having a good diet, Suki living in a good environment, my milking area being nice and clean. So I'll put fresh sawdust down here in a little bit. I like to have it nice and clean in here. If she was to poop or pee or anything in here, I want to take that out right away. In the summer, once the hose unfreezes, I'm going to give it a nice wash out. So just making it sure it's as clean as possible in there. So Suki's lucky. She has like the nicest spot to live ever. So she lives in this barn here, but then she also has that whole entire pasture out there to herself. So she's pretty lucky. She sleeps in the barn here, like the door's open, but she always just sleeps in here. So we just make sure that she always has fresh bedding, that we scoop out any poop. So that's my morning chore, is to scoop out any poop that she did in here. And yeah, she's out on pasture, so it's nice and green out there. She's always got fresh feed, fresh water. So you live a pretty good life, hey Suki? And so because I spend twice a day, every day with Suki, or I just said that Zach milks at night, so because I spend one time a day with Suki, I know her really well. I know if something's up with her. I know if she's not feeling well at all. So that's really important to me to understand that my milk is safe, because I know that my cow is healthy. If there is, for some reason, one day she wasn't feeling well, or I have such a good understanding of her health and what her normal is, that I can easily kind of take interventions to help her if she's just feeling a little bit off. It's also because we're only milking one cow. We've milked 2 cows before, but because we're only milking one cow, all of the milk that we get, we know exactly what it tastes like. If for some reason there's a little bit of a weird taste, then we're like, oh, well, what's going on here? Is it just a diet thing? Or is she eating something weird out on pasture? Is it a little bit salty? Maybe that's a sign that she's getting some mastitis. So because we are only drinking her milk, we really have a good understanding of what its baseline is and what's not normal for it. So I always like to tell this story because I think it's like the coolest thing ever, and I wish I lived back then. So there's this story I once read, and I can't remember where I read it now, but I read that back in the day, in Britain this was, the milkman was actually the farmer. So the milkman, the farmer, would bring his cow door to door, and he would milk that milk out fresh and warm right there for each person, and go along the doors and milk everybody's milk out fresh. And I just think that's like the coolest story ever. And I've heard that that was also the case in, I think it was Paris. Yeah, but with goats, where they would bring the goats and everybody would come and get their milk. So everybody was getting fresh raw milk all the time. Now, then you kind of fast forward a few years, and then that's not the case anymore. Everything's getting a little bit more industrialized, and all of a sudden the farmer, it's more economical for him to milk the cow out on the farm and then bring the milk in. They were bringing it in. It was in like unlidded buckets and like soot, and all the things from the Industrial Revolution were falling in the bucket, and then people were getting sick. So that's one reason that people were getting sick. Suki's going to come back in here. She's like, what the heck is she doing? So raw milk does have to be treated with respect. Milk is the very best host for bacteria. It's why it makes such great cheese. And it doesn't care if it has good bacteria or bad bacteria. It'll take any bacteria. And so if some poop lands in the bucket, sure, it's going to feed that bacteria. Like that milk is going to potentially be, say, contaminated with coliform. So you have to be careful that you're making sure you clean your milk, that you're using your safe handling practices like I'm talking about in this video. And so I don't mean to scare you guys when I talk about all these things. The reason I'm talking about them is mostly from a cheesemaker perspective. It's not very often at all that you're going to actually have a dangerous contamination in your milk. It's more common that you're just going to have a contamination of a bacteria that you maybe don't want as much, and it's going to interfere with your cheese making. It's going to make your milk spoil a little sooner. So I don't mean to scare you at all with this. I've only ever had one coliform contamination that I could like 100% say was coliform, and that's in 7 years. So it's not so common. The thing is, you want to limit the bacterial load that goes into your milk. Of course, you're going to have a little bit of, you're in a barn, you're going to have a little bit of contamination go into the milk. But it's so important to make sure that that contamination is a low amount. It's also so important to make sure that your milk is healthy. You want to make sure that that milk is healthy and that it already doesn't have bacteria growing in it. So you kind of get my drift, that it's just about limiting that bacterial load to make sure that your milk is healthy. All right, so now I'm finished my chores in the barn. I'm going to take you guys back up to the house and show you how I clean this milk, and then I'm going to show you guys how I store this milk and talk about a few more things that I probably missed in this video. All right, so I'm heading up now. Ooh, you can feel how cold it is. The tires were frozen to the ground. So I'm just backing up from the barn here. This is like the harrowingest part of my whole morning, is backing up along the barnyard here. I'm a terrible backer upper. I'm terrible at it. You should see me try and back up like a stock trailer. It's a sad story, but I actually am pretty proud of myself because I got way better at it this year. Like way better. I used to like just not jackknife it, but like I would stop myself before I jackknifed it, but almost jackknife it all the time. Now I can actually do it, so that's good. But anyways, so I'm just backing up here, but I wanted to say that I forgot to say about teat dip. So teat dip is something that can be done before and after milking, like post teat dip and a pre teat dip. We used to do one after milking when we first got our first milk cow here. We did it for probably like a year, and then we decided that we didn't need to do it. The reason we did it was because Zach's actually was a dairy farmer in Wisconsin. So when we started milking, we kind of did like the same practices that he was used to on the dairy farm, and all dairy farms do teat dips, I think. Yeah. So teat dips are basically at the end of milking, we would dip our cow's teats in like an iodine type mixture, and that's because the teat, like the milking orifice, I don't know if that's the right word. Subscribe to me for good cow anatomy. Anyways, the teat orifice stays open for like half an hour, 20 minutes, half an hour or something after you milk. So say your cow goes and lays in poop after you milk, well then that bacteria can get into the teat orifice. I'm gonna look it up and tell you what it's actually called. So that bacteria can get in there. So we used to do that, but now we find that if we just keep her area nice and clean, then the risk of her going and laying in poop is pretty low. You know, she's probably gonna, if she goes and lays down in the next 20 minutes, it's probably gonna be out on her pasture, it's gonna be in her nice clean hay, she's not gonna just go and lay in the mud. So, well, she might, but the risk is pretty low as long as you're keeping their living area nice and clean. All right, so I'm almost home here. Going to look up teat orifice. There's my garden. Drive by. My garlic's coming up. And then nothing else is in there. Oh, I got chives in there. But everybody's got chives going. You can see Suki from the house. There's the dogs. My greenhouse, we're going to reframe it this year. It's falling apart. It's sad. And it needs a good sand. I don't know if I'm going to sand the shakes or not. I haven't decided yet. But it's so cute. I love it. It's my favorite part of the whole farm. It's my little greenhouse. Yeah, okay, so I'm getting up here and then I'm going to show you guys how to clean that milk. It's been about 20 minutes since I finished milking, so we're still in that half an hour time frame. And like I said, it's -5 is what we're dealing with for temperature. -5. So nice and cold. Yeah, if it was +30, I would have been way more proactive of getting up here quicker. Alright guys, so I'm back in the house now. I'm going to show you guys how I clean the milk. So I've got a big bucket here. I've got these fancy milk strainers. Zach brought them from Wisconsin with him, but you could just use like cloth, just something, all you need is something to strain it through. So you could just strain like through like cheesecloth or something as well, or you can find strainers that are sort of like this on Amazon. I'll link them below. And then you just need like a little filter to go in there. So it's basically like a coffee filter. We buy them at our feed supply store. They're called milk filters. And you just stick it in there, and then there's this little piece that just sticks in the bottom there. This is what the bottom looks like. So you just stick it in the bottom, like that, and then you put this center piece in there and it fits in snugly. Just press it down in there. So this is how my milk strainer works. The ones that are on Amazon look like they work a little bit differently, but basically once you have it in there, the milk just is going to strain through these holes in the side of here, and then it's like a nice tight seal so that no dirt and debris can get through. Alright, so I put that on top of here. The only thing I don't like about this one is that it doesn't fit over a milk jar. Jasper, carefully, don't knock over the camera soon. Alright, so we talked about making sure the milk that's coming from the animal is healthy. We talked about making sure that you're using good milk handling practices in the barn and when you're milking. Now we're going to talk about storing your milk and making sure that you're storing it in the safest possible way to limit contamination and just keep your milk healthy. So these nice clean jars, we store them downwards like this so they're not going to get any dust or debris. Oftentimes I'll store them in the refrigerator. This is kind of a twofold thing. So I'll store them in the refrigerator, one because it's just a good place to store them, but two because it keeps the jar nice and cold. So when you add that milk in there, it's already going to start to cool down a little bit. Source of contamination is seals. So for things like in your mother bucket, you want to make sure that you're getting those seals really clean. If you're not able to get them clean anymore, then maybe you need to change out your bucket lid. I'll throw this in the dishwasher sometimes to really get into those crevices. Another big one is the seals on the lids. If you were having like kind of older jar lids that constantly had background noise. If you had like older jar lids that were kind of like could potentially have some contamination on them, you could put a thing of plastic wrap between them and the milk. So now let's get it ready for cooling. So if I was going to use this milk for cheese making, I would get it in the pot, I would start heating it and culturing it as soon as possible to kind of try and stay as much in that half-hour window as possible, depending on how hot it was in the house. Because I'm not going to use the milk for cheese making today, I'm going to put it in the refrigerator. There's something that some people do called rapid cooling, where they'll put it in the freezer for like 2 hours before they move it to the fridge, and this is going to lower the temperature of the milk a lot quicker. I don't do that simply because I'm afraid that I'm going to forget the jars on the freezer. So I just put it in the fridge. It works good for me. But people say that it lasts a lot longer if you're struggling with contamination and milk that's going bad a lot quicker. First you want to be looking at all the other sources of contamination, but you could also try the rapid cooling, which will help as well. So I'm going to move these to the fridge, and then I'm going to wash my dishes. So I always wash my dishes right after I get my clean milk into the fridge or into the cheese pot, and the reason for this is I don't want that milk to dry on there. It just becomes so much harder to get off, and I potentially could be missing some. So most of the time I just wash my dishes with regular soap, hot soapy water. So I have to put it in the bathtub because I don't have any better of a setup than that. I always go cleanest to dirtiest. So for me, my cleanest bucket is my one that I strained that nice milk into, and there was only clean milk in this bucket. So I'm going to wash this bucket first, and then I'm going to go on and on and on in the line of cleanest to dirtiest until I finally get to my milking bucket, which is the dirtiest because Suki like kicked it a little bit with her feet, so there's potentially some poop on the outside of it. Versus like my nice milk strainer and my nice mother bucket that never really came in contact with too much stuff. So I'm gonna get going here. Another thing I always do is look at my milk strainer. So looking at your milk strainer is just like best practice, because if you were going to get any first signs of mastitis at all, you would be able to see on this milk filter. When you picked, if you had like a little lump of what looked like milk or like cottage cheese, if you picked it up and you rubbed it between your fingers and it didn't break up like butterfat would, if it like stayed intact like tissue, that's when you know that you maybe have that you can start maybe treating for a little bit of mastitis. What I would do in that case, because it's a very early sign, if you didn't have any other signs, I would just go to using Dynamint cream, and that might clear it right up. So always look at your milk strainer. So I got my nice clean dishes there. I'm out of bleach right now, which is a terrible thing to be out of, but usually I do a bleach rinse after, for most of my equipment after I'm all done. So I'll like rinse the soap out of my equipment, and then I'll put like a cap full of bleach in with some water, do a little bit of a rinse of everything, and then rinse it again. You want to make sure you get all that bleach off. So I'll do that, not every day, but about once a week is when I do that bleach rinse. So I briefly wanted to talk about if you're using a milking machine, because what I was doing today was hand milking, and that's an open milking system, whereas if you're using a milking machine, that's a closed milking system. So you're not so much worried about poop falling in the bucket as you are worried about making sure that your machine is really clean so that there's no bacteria growing in that. So we used to use a milking machine a little bit. We had something called a milk stone remover, and we would just follow the manufacturer's directions on the milking machine really closely, making sure you're getting all of that potential contaminant out of the machine. It's a little bit of work to clean a milking machine, and in the end our milking machine was just like chronically broken, but it was just so much easier for us to hand milk than having to go through all the cleaning processes and lugging that milking machine down to the barn. So that was just a side note. Milking machines work great for some people, but yeah, for us it was just always making sure that you're using a milk stone remover it's basically like an acid, and it gets all of those that milk stone out of any of the nooks and crannies, hoses, those types of things. So some other sources of contaminations, like I said, checking seals, checking rivets, making sure that you're making sure if you have any rivets in your milking buckets or in your pots that they're really clean. Yeah, so I just want to do a little bit of a summary of what we talked about today. So when you're looking for safe raw milk, you want to be sure that it's coming from a healthy animal first and foremost. So as I said down in the barn, I'm with Suki every day. I know when she's healthy, I know when she's not. I'm comfortable not having her tested for diseases, but if you're sourcing milk from not your own farm, or if you're just do some research about it. See if that's something that you might be interested in. I'm also comfortable that I know when Suki's sick, I know when she's not sick, and I just have that kind of that relationship with her, and I really love that. I love that I get to have a relationship with my food. The next thing is making sure that their living situation is healthy, that they're not going to go and lay in poop afterwards, making sure that you're doing a good job of milking. Check out my stripping out video to make sure that you're actually stripping your cow out correctly, because you don't want to be leaving any of that milk back in the udder to be sitting in there and potentially having bacteria grow and having mastitis happen. So making sure, first and foremost, that you're doing a good job down in the barn. Second, it's transporting that milk, making sure you're transporting it in a closed bucket, making sure it's not taking a ton of time, making sure if it's warmer that you're going quicker, making sure. I have a friend that lives in Australia, and she says it takes her 6 minutes from the time she milks her cow to the time that she gets it cleaned and in the fridge, because it's just so hot there, you have to. And so it totally depends on where you live and what the situation is, how dirty the milk is that day. If it's a little bit dirty and you're planning on saving it, you want to be going quick, because you don't want that that bacteria that's sitting in there to be having a chance to thrive. When you clean it, making sure you're straining it. If you have to, strain it a second time. I used to always strain my milk twice, and then I kind of like moved away with it from that, because I was like, well, it's already clean. Like, my strainer's pretty tight, nothing's really leaking through, so I feel confident right now straining it once. But if you're feeling like you're not straining it well enough, strain it a second time. It doesn't hurt. Strain it a third time. It doesn't hurt. So then making sure that your cleaning equipment's clean, making sure that your jars are clean. Glass is really the best thing to store milk in. If you're storing it in like plastic containers, sometimes you can have problems with that plastic harboring the bacteria. Again, making sure that seals are clean, all of those stuff. And then making sure that you clean your cleaning equipment right after you finish processing your milk. So I hope you guys liked this video. I hope you found it helpful and I didn't ramble on too much. Sometimes when I take field trips, I just go on to like little rambles. It feels like taking a field trip because I don't often come out of the kitchen on YouTube. So let me know below if you like taking field trip, because we live on, I don't think I've told you guys on YouTube. I tell people on Instagram all the time, but we live on a nice big cattle ranch here. And I've got so much to show you guys about milk cows and cows. And I want to know what you guys want to know, because I can take you on a little field trip and teach you. So subscribe to my channel. Let me know below what you want to see, if you like this video, if you have any questions, and I will see you guys next Monday. Bye!